Hi, Ray Poynter here, and I'm going to talk about the implications of democratizing insights for research. So here's my agenda. What is democratizing and what is happening at the moment? And then I'm going to look at the trends to see where things are heading, and then I'm going to dive into the implications. After I've dealt with the implications, I'll make one or two recommendations for what I think people should be doing in this context. And then, of course, we will have the Q&A session. So first of all, what do I mean by democratization? Well, the first thing is we're seeing more people using research. And because it's more people, it's mostly non-researchers. So they're accessing dashboards, they're looking at information, they're going through knowledge management systems. So the research that is being conducted is reaching more and more people who need to use that research. The second change is more people are creating research. They're using the self-serve or the DIY platforms to create surveys. They're running online discussions. And many of these people are not market researchers. So we're getting more and more people creating research, more and more people using research, and indeed there is much more research going on. So let's dive into that. What is happening? The non-researchers are accessing dashboards. This has become a really popular tool for enabling more and more people in the organization to get the benefit from that evidence. So they're making evidence-based decisions. There are many knowledge management systems out there, and these make the data more accessible, help people find answers to questions. We're seeing more and more reports published on companies' intranets, within shared zones, SharePoint, things like this. And we're seeing search engines being used internally and externally to find out what information do we have to help people access results, access findings in order to make better decisions, evidence-based decisions. But non-researchers are also scripting surveys. They're commissioning one-stop solutions. What do I mean by a one-stop solution? I mean they go to a site that offers an ad test and they can upload 2, 3, 4 ads. They don't necessarily get to choose the questions. They're asked one or two very simple demographics like, do you want households? Do you want workers? Do you want people over and under this particular age? It chooses the test and it produces a report for them. These also exist for concept tests and a growing range of standardized tools and tests and projects. We're also seeing non-researchers creating online discussions, collecting video stories with the massive tools that are now available to capture video, and we see them accessing and analyzing social media. All of this has been enabled by the growth in platforms. There are thousands of platforms available now. Some of them target researchers, some of them target a much wider range of people. And this has been the thing that has enabled the change. The change has happened because people want to change. But the thing that enabled it was this growth in platforms. So what are the key trends as a consequence of what is happening? There is a move towards simple to use, simple to interpret. Because people want the results fast, because they are not expert researchers, in fact, they may be non-researchers, the trend is towards simpler to use, simpler to interpret, and away from the more exotic behavioral economics, neuroscience, biometrics, towards things that are pretty straightforward. The trend is towards fast, from the desire. We're in a meeting, we want to know how many people drink cappuccino in the morning. We'd really like to know that now during the meeting. So everything that can't answer it that quickly is second best. So second best might be in a couple of days, second best might be tomorrow, second best might be later today. But the drive is towards speed. Things are also getting cheaper. So as we are using the platforms more, as we are standardizing them, it becomes possible to offer things at cheaper and cheaper levels. It does raise some concerns about quality of data underneath it. If participants in the research are not being paid sufficient, that could be a really key issue. It's often free at the point of use. What do I mean by free at the point of use? So if we have a survey scripting tool, it's quite likely that individual members of staff do not have to pay something to do another survey. If you have an online community, it's quite possible that you as an individual user don't have to pay something explicit to use it one more time. If you have an online discussion tool or platform, you may not be paying for one more discussion. So that's what I mean by free at the point of use. And of course, that tends to increase the use. We're seeing a trend towards the complete solutions. So rather than a really nice tool to enable me to do max diff, we might have a prioritization solution where you simply enter the things you want to prioritize. It scripts the survey, collects the data, and presents a report back to you saying this is the structure of priorities that the people who were selected have. Which means the niches are remaining niches. If you do conjoint analysis, you are probably seeing no reduction in the amount of work that you're going to be demanded because it's not amenable to most of the self-serve options. If you are doing advanced ethnography, if you're doing semiotics, if you're doing structural equation modeling, those are niches. They stay niches, but they stay viable as well. So what are the implications for this democratization? Well, the first is that most research will be done by non-researchers. In the recent studies by SMR and others, including NewMR, what we saw is something like 50% of projects are now being conducted internally by clients. Most of those projects are being conducted by non-researchers. Some are being conducted by the insight managers, but there is a significant percentage, and it is growing, and it will soon be more than half of all the research projects conducted in the world will be done by non-researchers. Most research will be initiated by non-researchers. That's probably also always been true, that they have been the people pressing for it and commissioning it, but they are much more hands-on now. They're accessing the platform instead of accessing people. Of course, one of the great things about that is non-researchers are in a much better place to turn research into action than an insight manager, and a much, much better place than a research agency. So if and when non-researchers do the research right, it's a much faster path to implementing that as a business change and opportunity. The median price per project will fall. The price of niche projects probably won't change very much, but the median price, the typical average project, is going to get cheaper and cheaper. Speed will usually be more important than quality. People want to be 80% right now, not 90% right tomorrow, and not 100% right in a few weeks. Most of the time, knowing when quality is truly important is going to be a key skill. There are going to be some errors with this democratization, but that was always so. Agencies made mistakes. Insight teams made mistakes. So we need to learn to deal with that and make sure that we minimize the errors and we control for them as best we can. And platforms are going to grow. They're going to be the great enabler of this change. That is where we should be really paying attention. What are the platforms doing? What are they enabling them? What are they enabling? How might we use it? And the platforms are going to get smarter. And by smarter, I mean more algorithms, more artificial intelligence, more machine learning, and they're going to become more integrated with each other, but also vertical integration, where one platform offers everything from self-serve scripting tools through to single solutions, which will say, we will do the tracking, just tell us what the brands are, we will select the sample, we will do the reporting. Does this mean research is going to be dumbed down? I don't think so. Not necessarily. Of course it could, but I don't think it will. So here is an early car. You pretty much needed to be a chauffeur and an engineer to drive those early cars. Now we have these wonderful cars of today. They've got automatic gear change. Everything about them is straightforward. Everybody who passes their driving test can drive a car. That is what we mean by democratizing. And the cars are much better. And they travel more safely, and they travel faster, and they travel greater distances. Of course, there are still niches. Most of us who could drive that Jaguar in the top right would not be able to get into that racing car and probably start it. And if we could start it, we couldn't probably change the gears and drive it properly, because that is a niche. So we don't need to see research being dumbed down. We need to see the production of better vehicles for everybody and niche vehicles for experts. So what are the risks that we do need to be aware of? Naive research and naive interpretations. Asking people, if we offer you this, will you buy it? And believing the answer is what I mean by naive research and naive interpretations. We need to make sure that we are teaching and sharing the right sort of research thinking and the understanding of the consequences. Errors in design, implementation, or interpretation. So we need to try to design those out with the democratization. And we want to make sure that there isn't too much overconfidence. If we get somebody who is a fantastic designer doing their own usability research, they may not realize that they're a beginner at usability research. If we get somebody who is a chief financial officer of a major organization, brain the size of a planet, really good at finance, they may not realize they have no ability to script a survey. So we need to make sure that people do understand that this is a science and there is a reason that questions are asked the way they are. What are the rewards for doing all of this? There is one really big reward. More use of evidence-based decision-making. That is what we're going after. All of this democratization enables us to have more evidence-based decision-making, and that's got to be a good thing. So, the recommendations. First of all, for insight teams who perhaps are feeling a little challenged because of the growth of the non-researchers in their organizations conducting and interpreting research. Become the leaders, the coaches, the advocates, the enablers. Be the people who say, yes, that is a good tool for us to use in-house. No, that's not a good tool for us to be using in-house. This is how we're going to use it. This is the process you go through when you create questions, that you should be using them from these banks. Here are the methods of interpreting it, so that we become the people that make sure the platforms are delivering good evidence into that evidence-based decision-making. What about the agencies? Focus on what self-serve can't do. If you can be done, the work you do can be done just as easily by somebody who has spent 2 or 3 weeks getting to grips with the platform, there is no money to be made in that zone. You have got to be adding something. Now that adding might be understanding the problem. That might be using advanced techniques. It might be by creating better solutions. But you need to be doing what the self-serve platforms can't offer. And for individual researchers, you need to be an expert. You do not want to be just a generalist. You want to be a semiotician or an ethnographer or a data scientist or a coder or something, computer coder that is, not coding open ends. I think that might be a bit of a dead-end route at the moment. And you want to be T-shaped. You want to understand where you fit in the business. And that T-shape isn't just about understanding qualitative and quantitative research and the basics. It's also understanding business. It's also understanding design. It's also understanding what customer centricity means in the round, so you can add your expertise to the team and deliver additional value. So with that, I look forward to your questions.